Hi, Assalamualaikum to all the panels. Today, we are Group 75 will be presenting our final year project with the title Toward a Cashless Society, Determining People's Behavioral Intentions in Utilizing Cashless Transactions in Sungai Nibong, Batu Pahat, Johor. But before that, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Nur Haida binti Saiman, and together with me today, Nur Atasha binti Maksum. Without further ado, let us start with the research background. The 12th Malaysia Plan, which is RMK12, emphasized the growth of the digital economy as well as effort to strengthen digital infrastructure and services to develop future talent to increase the country's economic growth. This strategy will accelerate the adoptions of technology and innovation in making Malaysia a high-tech and high-income country. The Communications and Multimedia Commissions (MCMC) have said this technology will not only revolutionize how we live and make it more efficient and smarter, but will also take the country towards the fourth industrial revolutions beside pull in the investor. Furthermore, COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated digital transformation which had filled every aspect of people's life beside altering economic, social and structural domains. A survey carried out by Lembaga Penduduk dan Pembangunan Keluarga Negara (LPPKN) found that more than half of the respondents stated that the use of digital technology while working from home has increased their level of work productivity. In addition, the pandemic also has accelerated the use of non-cash payment in Malaysia, and this has provided the momentum for us to become a cashless society. Therefore, many programs and policies have been introduced by the government to improve the country's digital capabilities and improve the digital economy, such as Jalinan Digital Negara Jendela was enacted to provide wider coverage and a better quality of broadband experience for the people while preparing the country to 5G technology. Other programs under it are such Program Jaringan Prihatin and Peranti Siswa.
Alright, now we move to research problem statement. The study aims to understand technology acceptance model in determining the people behavior in utilizing the cashless transaction. However, there are three issues found in the study. The first one is technology gap between the rural and urban area. Government has implemented various activity and program to reduce the digital divide, especially between the urban and rural area. However, the country is faced with the digital divide issue, which is the gap between the people with effective access to the ICT and those with very limited access. This is contributed by many factors such as educational attainment, economic factors, as well as the location. Another challenge on becoming a cashless society is when the society is still reluctant to adopt with the new technology, as it was still early and stay new for them. To illustrate, some elderly are discouraged from utilizing internet because they perceive them to be difficult and time-consuming. They believe that the shift towards online services lay more responsibility on oneself to become expert in a variety of fields, where previously people could just seek out skilled people to help them. The elderly resistance to technology adoption is also partly a result of the health aspect. Another reason, according to Chu, the poor in financial, time, infrastructure, also the literacy in ICT and skill become the barrier for the people at rural area to adopt the technology. Therefore, lack of facilities such as having a poor internet will challenge Malaysia to develop more digitalization at rural areas.
Now I will continue with the research objective. The first objective, to identify perceived ease of use, affects the perceived usefulness of using cashless transactions among the villages in Sungai Nibong. Second, the objective is to investigate to what extent our perceived ease of use and perceived usefulness influence the attitude of villagers in Sungai Nibong to use the digital technology. Thirdly, it is to analyze how does the attitude towards using digital technology affect the behavioral intention to use the cashless transactions among the villages in Sungai Nibong. Alright, for the conceptual framework, for this research we adapted from Technology Acceptance Model by Davies 1989. Technology acceptance model has been one of the most influential model of technology acceptance, with two primary factors influencing an individual's intention to use the technology, which are the perceived ease of use and perceived usefulness. Technology acceptance model has been widely applied in much research related to the technology acceptance and technology adoption. Furthermore, Davis also introduced the construct in technology acceptance model. Among the construct, perceived usefulness and perceived ease of use form an end user's belief on a technology and therefore predict his or her attitude towards the technology, which in turn predict its acceptance.
I will continue to explain research methodology, the cross-sectional design being used for the quantitative method. A cross-sectional design is the observational research that examines information of the targeted population at one particular time. In this study, technology acceptance model is widely used in describing the user acceptance of new technology, which is cashless transaction. Therefore, the unit of analysis is the individual who is the villagers of Kampung Sungai Nibong Batu Pahat Johor, who aged 18 years old and above. Furthermore, this study used convenient sampling technique because the targeted population and targeted area were not possible to collect from the whole population. The benefit from using this technique, it incurred low cost and save time, and it also can be applied to create hypothesis and objective for the research study. To gain the feedback or response from the villagers, a set of questionnaire with 5 Likert scale data measurement will be designed based on the variable used in this study. Next, the appropriate sample size calculation and power analysis have become major issue in research and analysis. Due to the insufficient information, it required the study to use the G-Power software to support sample size and power calculation for various statistical methods. The purpose sample size for this study is 200 respondents, and the sample size proposed has been considered on the scientific, economic, and ethical point of view to answer the research question and enhance the efficiency as well as the effectiveness of the study. Smart PLS is being used to generate the data in this study because it enables to have reliable and valid for each the variable, also the indicator variable. So the Smart PLS consists with 2 elements, which is assessment measurement model and assessment of structural model. Hence, the data collection is divided into 5 sections as shown in the slide.
Okay, for the first element, measurement model, or known as outer model. This model is to measure whether the variables and the indicator variables have the relationship towards the variables itself. Indicator variables mean here are the questions under the variables. Then, in order to achieve the threshold value of validity and reliability, the 4 aspects will be measured. The first one is indicator loading. As I mentioned earlier, the indicator loading were the questions under the variables. So, based on our analysis, there are 5 indicators need to be removed due to the threshold value were below than 0.70. The threshold value for the indicator loading need more than 0.70 to shows they have the relationship between the variables. So, stated in the table, all the values for the indicator loading were more than 0.70, so the remaining indicator values have the significant relationship. The second aspect is internal consistency, reliability, and convergent validity. For the internal consistency reliability, it needs to measure using Koromba alpha and composite reliability. In order to know whether the value had passed the threshold value or not, it needs to ensure the alpha value were between 0.70 and 0.95 as recommended by Tavakol and Denik 2011. While for the composite reliability, it can consider moderate good if the threshold value were more than 0.80. So, based on the table shown, Koromba alpha and composite reliability values are above the threshold of 0.70 and below 0.95. It indicates that the model has good internal consistency reliability. Alright, for the last aspect, which is discriminant validity. It is to measure that each variable are truly different from each other. For this validity, it will be used the HTMT or heterotrait monotrait ratio. The threshold value for HTMT is below 0.9. The value with below 0.9 can be considered as an effective and cognitive. So, based on the analysis has been performed and it shows all construct of variables obtain value below 0.0, which indicates that the model has good discriminant validity. Since all the aspects have reached the threshold value and the model's build has good validity and reliability, the structural model can be constructed.
Now we move to structural model. It is to measure relationship between the variable. For example, the variable between the attitude toward use and behavioral intention to use. There are several aspects that are need to be tested, including variance inflation factor (VIF) to assess whether there is a collinearity issue in the model, and then to need to do hypothesis testing and determining the predictive power of the model through R-squared. To test the threshold value of VIF, it should not less than 0.2 and not more than 5. As can be seen in the table, all the VIF value for all variables will be below 5. So it shows that the variable does not have any collinearity issue. So the hypothesis testing can be constructed on the relationship between the variable. Then for the hypothesis testing, it has been used the part coefficient and p-value to determine the level of significance of the relationship between the variable. The part coefficient should more than 0.1 and the p-value should less than 0.05 in order to get impact toward the framework. Now we move to the first objective, which is to identify perceived ease of use affect the perceived usefulness in using cashless transaction. From the data that has been generated, those two variables have significant relationship when the ease of use has influenced the usefulness by proven when the beta is equal to 0.734 and p-value is less than 0.05, which is the H1 can be accepted. And then it can be stated that the respondent agree that if e-money could give ease to the user, it will give something useful for the user itself. And then for the second objective, which is to investigate to what extent perceived ease of use and perceived usefulness influence the attitude of villagers in using the digital technology. In this objective, there are consist two hypotheses, which is first is to know whether the perceived ease of use will influence the attitude toward using. So based on our data, it proven that the ease of use will influence the attitude of the respondent to use the technology. It can be seen in the shown table. Then, for the perceived usefulness have influenced the attitude of villagers in using the digital technology. The hypotheses were also accepted. Then, the user admit that the usefulness of the cashless transaction will change their attitude to use the e-money. It is because they agree that the cashless transaction could improve their performance. To simplify, if the cashless transaction could give benefit for them, they will use the e-money to make the transaction. By using online banking, Touch and Go, Boost Pay, it does not have any limitation for them to make any payment related to their utility bill, for example. Now, they does not need to queue at a long time just to pay their bills. Then, for the last objective is to analyze how does the attitude towards using technology has effect towards the behavioral intention to use the cashless transaction. For this objective, it also proven when the hypotheses were accepted. It is because according to the question distribution, the villagers have the planning to use the e-money more often and they wish to use the e-money when needed. It can be confirmed when 75 respondents have been using the e-money application more than 10 times in a month. It shows that they have the attitude to use the technology in their daily life. Furthermore, it also can justify that they frequently use the e-money at their area. And then for the R-square, it will explain in the next slide. Now we move to the R-square, so we can conclude that after all the hypotheses were accepted, since it has the significant relationship between the variable, then after the hypothesis testing has been made, it will measure the strength of the model predictive model. It measured by to obtain the determination coefficient through R-square. The result of the analysis showed that all the predictors of the dependent variable have moderate value. Therefore, based on the result of our study, all the dependent variables in the model show a moderate coefficient of determination, when perceived usefulness show an R-square value of 53.9% change in variance, and while attitude toward using by 65.8% and behavioral intention to use by 56.1% change in variance from the independent variable. So based on the slide, it was our result from PLS analysis after the system has been generated.
Now we have reached the research recommendation. The findings of this study will be helpful for e-money companies and developers to provide the e-money application that is capable of meeting the customer requirement. The application should be perceived as marketable and beneficial to consumer. The company shall provide insight for better understanding about factors that influencing consumer intention to adopt e-money or use a cashless system in order to enhance their applications and fulfill consumer desire. Next, to achieve a cashless society in Sungai Nibong, Batu Pahat, Johor, it required training and socialization about electronic money and transaction for the resident. To illustrate, the government should introduce a cashless transaction system in every sector and urge the business to apply the system more often. The government might take this initiative to educate the general populations about the convenience of using a cashless system. Hence, with a lot of exposure towards the use of e-money in every business, it will become a habit for the people to utilize the cashless transaction. Thirdly, the utilizations of e-money system can be initiated by quick internet access and top-notch servers. It is because poor internet connections or poor quality server makes people unsatisfied in using the e-money application.
Okay, now we have faced with some challenges while conducting this study. It's quite difficult for the researcher to reach the respondent at research. This is because the location chosen was quite far from researcher place. The researcher took the initiative to obtain their information by distributing the survey question in the Facebook group of Sungai Nibong residents. Even though the question have been posted in the Facebook group, it takes quite some time for the survey to meet the number of target required. When the survey questions are distributed online, the data information obtained may not be from the desired audience. Thus, for further recommendation as a start to learn to do research at the degree level, researchers should choose an area that is easy to reach, like choosing a neighborhood around the home is one example. Researchers can save money by selecting an accessible location. Next, the difficulty in determining the sample size is another challenge faced by the researcher. Due to the insufficient information required, the study used the G-Power software to state the sample size of the study. Hence, and this study is only involving one area. Future researchers are advised to prepare with all the challenges that will be faced. It is because if they want to have a good research and able to have a clear and accurate result, it is required a lot of effort and good time management. To sum up, this study gives the researcher a better understanding on technology acceptance model in determining the behavioral intention in using the cashless transaction. Overall, the research question and objective were achieved successfully and answered. We would like to express our sincere gratitude to all panel for listening to our VIVA video, and not to forget to our supervisor. Thank you for the advice and the guidance for us to complete this final year project. With that, we end our presentation. Thank you.